You're good.
Hello. There we go. All right. Good morning. It is 9:01 on October 10th. This is the City of Findlay City Planning Commission, and I will call this meeting to order. Jacob, when you are ready for roll call.
Mayor Marin,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mr. Trombley,
Here.
Mr. Klinger.
Here.
All right. We'd like to review the prior meeting minutes. We have the September 11th meeting minutes that as distributed. Are there any questions or comments?
I make the motion to approve.
Second.
Perfect. We got a first and 2 seconds, so we're good to go. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Minutes are approved. All right. At this time, if anyone planning to speak for or against an item could please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in.
Okay. Do you affirm that all the testimony and evidence you're about to give in a case before this commission this day will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and will conform to the facts of the case and the rules of this commission? This you affirm under the pains and penalties of perjury. Please say I do.
You may be seated. All right, moving forward, old items. Item 1, application for site plan review SP-14-2024, filed by the Woodlands of Findlay Assisted Living for a 2-story building addition to their facility at 600 Fox Run Road, which will connect the existing Wing B Birch Hollow with Wing D Dogwood Knoll and Wing F Forest Hills. General information.
So again, this request is located on the west side of Fox Run Road, south of the intersection with Greendale Avenue. The 2 parcels are zoned M2 multifamily high density. It is in an area that's a mixture of R3 small lot residential, O1 office institution, and CD condominium. The west side of the site has a creek, which is in the 100-year floodplain. Parcel history, there has been an assisted living community at the property since 1982. Originally, the facility was constructed when it was zoned C residential, but has moved to the M2 multifamily high density district to better align with the use. Staff analysis at the September 12, 2024 CPC meeting, the applicant was applying for a 27,628 square foot addition to the site. That would have been added an additional 53 units to bring the total units in the facility to 126. This addition would have been 2 stories and connected those 3 buildings on the site together. It would have met the setback requirements for the district. Since that meeting, staff has met with the applicant and they have reduced the proposed addition from 2-story down to 1-story. This will reduce the proposed number of units down to 34. This will would still eliminate the parking area in the rear, which would have accommodated 40 parking spaces. To offset the loss, they had proposed to install 16 new parking spaces on the north side of the parcel in those blacked out areas. This would have given them 56 parking spaces total, down from 82. And for the M2 district, assisted living communities are required 1 parking space per 3 units. So at the time, so that would account for 36 parking spaces for the total number of units with that reduction. The remaining 20 would be available for staff and visitors. During discussions with the applicant, he stated that at peak he would have a need for 10 parking spaces for staff. With the reduction in spots and with the increase in units, staff still had concerns with the parking on site to accommodate the growth of facility. It should also be stated that the facility has changed owners over the years. If the assisted living use is to continue, the facility, or if the assisted living use were to discontinue, the facility would need to adjust its parking provided off-street. This is because the assisted living parking standards are less strict than other uses seen in the M2 district. When the site was originally constructed, it did not have a site plan for approval. It was in the C Res district, which did not have requirements for lot coverage at the time. The existing conditions of the site were above the 40% allowed for the lot coverage of the M2 district, which is around 45% currently. The expansion would further push the limit for lot coverage and would need a variance from the Findlay BZA to approve the site plan.
Very good. And if you would, you're welcome to close the door. I know we're getting some hallway noise. Engineering,
No additional comments.
fire prevention.
Really no additional comments.
Thank you. All right, so I don't see a staff recommendation. This is a carryover item from our last meeting. And I think it was the sentiment of the commission that there needed to be some work between the developer owner and the residential property owners abutting for us to feel comfortable. I know from my perspective, I had significant concerns. I'm glad to see you moving away from the 2-story, but I still think that this is too big for this area, especially with the modifications that would have to be made to abut and not cause significant disruption, as well as the parking challenge. So if the applicant could come forward, talk a little bit about the changes that were made in conjunction with the neighborhood.
Yes, so I spoke with the neighbors, fence in the back, and Mr. Roos as well, about what we would put, an 8-foot fence, double-sided wood panel, with no gaps in between. They both thought that was a good idea. Then it's on the back of the property, we were going to throw green giants, about 25 of them, to cover that around the detention pond and where his property would see anything through. And then I spoke to Mr. Roos about adding maple trees, and I just spoke to Sylvia. They weren't fan of the maple tree. Sylvia was more a fan of the green giant, just because any leaves that would fall onto the property could be more of a mess. So we're perfectly fine throwing that up along the entire back wall for that foliage, and so they have their privacy as well. Mr. Roos also had looked at putting a drainage tile to keep water out of his mother's yard, which we have no problem putting that in as well.
Eric, real quick, can you talk about, given that there is a creek there, are they going to be able to put a fence in that area?
Yeah, as long as there's not a floodway, a fence can go in a floodplain.
Very good. So we did receive a couple of emails still objecting to the project from the neighbors. So I think kind of wanted to hear from the commission and figure out, yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Add something. One of the things that I think is critical in the understanding of this project is that this is an assisted living facility, and the individual units within that facility do not qualify as an apartment. They do not qualify as a living unit without a kitchen, at least in my interpretation of code reading through a dwelling unit. It must have a kitchen and other associated rooms designed to be for people to live independently of each other within the facility. That is not the case here. These do not have kitchens in them. There is a sink, a microwave, and a small compact refrigerator in there, but that does not qualify as a kitchen without a stove. And so these could never be apartments in their current condition.
I don't think it's on.
Nope, there we go. So, okay. So as they stand today and as the new ones are designed, they don't qualify as an apartment. So if someone wanted to come in and make this into an apartment complex, they would have to do major revisions to the entire building and the site and so forth, and would have to comply with the regulations at that time. As it stands now, the way it's designed, they're not apartments, they can't qualify as apartments, and that's really one of the major key points in this whole development, is it can't be multifamily. It can't be those apartments. They don't qualify. So I think that's important to understand.
Thank you. Yeah, that helps on the parking perspective. From my perspective, it doesn't help on the lot coverage. This still is.
Right, and with the lot coverage, one of the things that we looked at, because there's such a smaller parking requirement for assisted living, we're able to eliminate a lot of the parking, because as it stands, we're at 40%, as it was with the existing pavement and so forth. That's one of the reasons why we looked at, okay, we don't need that parking, we get rid of that the 5% over on the lot coverage, that's minimal. And with the decrease in traffic, without it being a multifamily type use, that I believe is justified for just that extra 5%. Because again, it's not increasing usage, traffic, or anything like that by having that additional 5%.
Now, are you saying you're at 45% lot coverage then? Because I interpreted that here that it's currently over or about 45% lot coverage, and then you're going to increase that a little more, I think.
I
Would that
believe
be
it.
correct?
They're pretty much at that 40% right now, and with the reduction of the parking with that addition, they were going up to about 45%.
Okay, so we're asking for about a 5% variance then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, when I calculated it, it's at 40% right now, and it's about 3 to 4% over once we add the addition.
Okay.
So it's hard for me to just envision what you're proposing for the landscaping. I mean, there was no plan submitted that we got, so it is hard to kind of just spitball up here what you're proposing. Could you restate really clearly exactly what you're proposing for the landscaping on that south
Yes,
property line?
so on the south side, this
There's,
will be.
there's a pointer.
Oh,
Nope. Perfect. Yep. On this south side, they've already had someone come in and do surveying. So from that front coverage right there off of the sidewalk, that will be an 8-foot fence that will run all the way down to the detention pond with just a corner on there for stability. In the middle somewhere, there'll be a gate for maintenance access. This will be double-sided panel fence, 8 foot, no gaps in between, no spaces. Along on this back as well, there's a lot of open coverage area. Right here is where Sylvia's area is. We will throw the green giants. They're about a 50-foot fully matured tree that will go in there for her coverage. And as well down throughout this area, along the detention pond and going around that back corner, we'll address another 25 for Mr. Dennis's property as well. And then if we can, throw the drainage tile along this back way to help with any water out of Mrs. Roos's property.
the landscape planning will be on your side of the fence, correct?
Is the fence going to be at the property line?
3 foot off,
3 foot off the property
give
line?
him maintenance.
Can you put a swale in there to pick up that water drainage, or are you looking at some sort of a French drain or what?
We've got to work out the details on that. My intention right now, I'd like to put a gentle swale on between the fence and the buildings. Keep it all over there to redirect that drainage over to the detention area, and possibly add a couple of catch basins if needed, and some drainage tile discharging into the detention basin. We do have to work the details out on that. We've got to get the elevations and so forth. But right now, that is the design, and we would work with the administration and the engineer on making sure that we get that in place.
Okay.
The detention that's existing versus what's going to have to be redone because of this, it looks like you're getting into other people's property on the south. Am I interpreting that correctly?
No,
on
we should
these?
not be on anyone else's property on that. We should not be going across the property line with any of the grading.
Okay.
At all. And we'll verify that as we develop the final details and work everything out with Jeremy.
Okay.
Where do you intend to put your dumpster enclosure?
So the dumpster currently will be there's 2 little like sheds
Right.
right here. They'll be thrown right here. They'll give plenty of access for the truck. We've already had him do a test pivot to make sure that he could pick it up right there.
And then he's got to back out all the way?
He'll back out to the back corner right here. There's parking right here where he can pull back out
If there's no cars.
if there's no cars. So we're at 37 residents currently in the building, and we have 2 people that drive. Well, they have cars, they're not allowed to drive, but it's just their property. Being that this is an assisted living waiver, no one can have any value of over $2,000. Most cars, they have a $2,000 value. So the chance of anyone having a vehicle, they're going to be a private pay resident. And with the rates of private pay, I think we have 7 people, still none of them drive.
If we
What
could, go ahead.
Kevin, I've also thought about firefighting access here. Can you get your vehicles around the building where you need to go and get them back out?
Yeah, as of right now, the fire department connection is on that. I guess it'd be the north side of the building. So really, no concern on our part at this point.
Okay.
If we could hear from some of the residents. Who drew the short straw gets to come up first.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Robert Bruce, representing my mother at 5 Hunters Gate. We certainly appreciate the efforts in terms of the screening and the drainage and the reduction. But overall, it is still a challenge for us to accept the redevelopment. I think I mentioned last time, we can't do anything about the zoning, but the fact that it's high-density zoning against the R1 residential, but this isn't even normal, this isn't 50 by 150-foot lots they're abutting. They're abutting lots that are over an acre, and so you got 5,000 square foot homes and so forth against 500 square foot, and even now 200 square foot units. So it is a challenge to accept adding more, and certainly the concern that was brought up when it comes to the parking, and if in the event they needed to go through a change, it's hard to understand that, what's to say that a variance wouldn't be granted because they try to represent a hardship of saying, oh, we'd have to tear down buildings to add the additional parking, and there's no guarantee that this body and BZA wouldn't approve that down the road. So again, it's hard for us to accept an additional traffic in the neighborhood, the potential for the lack of parking, the light spillage onto the property potentially. But like we said, we do appreciate the fact that they are addressing the screening. I think by code, my interpretation was they would be required to based on their redevelopment, but they have at least reached out to as they indicated, reached out to the neighbors. So we certainly appreciate the fact that they are doing the 8-foot fence and the drainage. But so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that wanted to speak on this item? And if you could, please just introduce yourself and provide your address.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Williams. I'm a retired real estate broker, and I live on Deer Lake Drive, which is in the condo development across the street. My objection to it is the increase of patients, which we already hear so many sirens in our neighborhood, that my concern is the noise factor. So also increasing the density, I don't feel fits well in up against a residential neighborhood. So any questions of me?
Doesn't appear so. Thank you,
Okay,
Mrs. Williams.
Thank you.
Uh-oh, Mr. Brueggemann's here.
Hi. Good morning. I'm Tim Brueggemann. I'm also in Deer Lake Condominiums across the street, and have been on the board there. And our neighbors' concerns started out with decreasing the parking, which might spill out onto Fox Run Road, which is right at the entrance to the condominium community, which Todd explained pretty well what the requirements are, so we hope that doesn't happen. We were also concerned about increasing the whole density, like Kathy mentioned. It's just so big as it is. My mother-in-law lived there for 3 or 4 years, and it was always very nice. Thank you. And it was huge back in there, and adding more units just seems to be too much for that site. But I'm glad to see the owner is working with the neighbors, like the Rooses, to solve some of those other problems. So, thank you.
Thank you. Others?
Hello, I'm Charlie Lichty. I do live across the street in the Deer Lake condos. I am concerned about the density. When it was occupied fully in the last few years, before all this change happened, there was a lot of parking on Fox Run Road. Being a real estate broker, I do think it will affect the value of property that this is abutting up against. And I just think that it could be an issue down the road. So I'm objecting to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Questions, comments from the commission?
Well, I like the clarification that we got, that the fact that this cannot be a residential, normal residential apartment or living unit. So it's always gonna be a assisted living. I think that the amount of traffic and stuff that you're gonna see with the addition is probably minimal. I think if anything, you'll see less traffic coming around the backside of the building since you won't have the large parking lot there now, so you won't have as much light, car lights and that sort of thing to contend with. But correct me if I'm wrong, but if we don't allow the addition, then the fencing and the drainage doesn't change. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Just real quick.
Just make sure you come forward, please.
So we're trying to use this addition to help with the room. So our building is currently licensed for 132 people. We have 73 units in there. So by ODH and ODA standard, we can put 132 people inside that building. So we're trying to eliminate putting two people in one bedroom by giving them a little bit more space and their own privacy. So, I mean, the traffic, all we have is resident agreements if they want to have a roommate. So if we do get to that point where this doesn't go through and we still have that influx that we need people, if we get people to agree to have a roommate, that's still going to be a larger number. This just keeps us from maxing out at 108 residents where we feel is comfortable, profitable for what we need. We have other facilities as well that's in Pickerington, Ohio, and Wadsworth. So we can always shift people to those areas, but we're trying to keep people local. What I get every week is no less than a dozen people looking for an AL waiver facility. There's nowhere around here that we can send them to. Closest is our facility over in Pickerington or over in Wadsworth, but you don't want to relocate someone's family that's been here in Findlay, Ohio for their entire life. Say, nope, you have to move 2 hours away because there's no AL waiver beds available. So this is just going to help keep them closer and keep us from having to double bunk people in a one-bedroom apartment.
Dan, to your point, one of my concerns is this is zoned M2 multifamily. When this went into bankruptcy and it was up for auction, every phone call we fielded was from developers wanting to transform it into a market rate rental facility. Looking at putting parking over here. So the challenge of it was, how do we get 2 parking spots per unit? So that is a concern. We went through the bankruptcy. We were fielding calls. There was a couple-week period, we probably had 7 to 8 developers looking to turn this into market rate apartments. And that's, whether this expansion occurs, that's still a concern of mine. And I do think the parking will be a challenge. It would be a challenge to turn it into market rate apartments, but that was what everyone was wanting. So that is a concern. I don't know if a deed restriction can be placed on the property. If they would be willing to put a deed restriction, I don't know legally if how that would cover us, but that's what did happen during the bankruptcy.
And Matt, with those calls, did they pretty much all realize that they weren't going to be able to do it?
So there was, a lot of them felt comfortable. Some of them were looking at taking down one of the buildings, reducing the units, still adding parking. So, no, it was a significant challenge. I agree. Because you'd have to get 2 parking spots per unit plus 1 parking spot for every 5 units.
Right, which would be extremely difficult.
Yes.
And you had mentioned the deed restriction. We had actually talked about that prior. I think Jacob may have had a conversation with Eric in regards to that. The owner is willing to put a deed restriction on the property such that it would only be able to be assisted living should it ever transfer. They are willing to do so.
Other questions, comments from the commission?
Just more of a comment. I hear both sides, and I respect the property owners here on the south, and they want to maintain that. I also respect the property owner that's trying to invest in this current property. Having the existing buildings here along the south, and with the improvements that this property owner is willing to do to maintain your privacy in your neighborhood here, this right here, if this building that they're proposing was up here or here along the adjacent property lines, I would have more heartburn and hear that concern a little more when we talk about lighting, obstruction and things like that. This proposal is actually tucked into an existing area that's actually shielding the adjacent property owners. So I don't know. It's just a comment that I see both sides, but some of the concerns that these residents have here, especially with the accommodations this property owner is willing to make with trees and fencing and so forth, this being tucked in here, these concerns, when it comes to lighting and so forth, are less of a concern to mine. But parking on the street and that congestion, I do still have a concern with that.
All right.
What was the number of people that you're licensed to?
We're licensed for 132 people currently, so, I mean, the congestion would be there even if we filled up We're currently licensed for 132, so without an addition, we would just end up double bunking the single bedroom apartments per state guidelines, and we'd still have the traffic or the parking. This would just keep us from wanting or needing to do that in the case that we have to.
But you can't double bunk unless you a roommate would, or an individual would agree to that, correct?
Yes, and most of them will, because they get a cutback, because they get to save a little bit of money on their room and board, which they're required to pay per state guideline. So that gives them a little bit more spending at the end of the month.
So are you anticipating double bunking in the new layout?
No, new layout, those are studio style apartments, so they're smaller, so they won't qualify for a two-person apartment.
But in the existing apartments, are you?
Only in the one bedrooms, but
What's-
we do not anticipate doing that if we get the addition through. We don't want to put that because the staffing requirements that we would have to get up to would be almost impossible.
Could you walk us through your parking, your estimates? I know there's a lot of numbers about how many you're giving up, how many you're adding, and just really clearly how many parking spots are you proposing, and how do you see those being divvied out between staff and people
So
living there?
we just
residents?
submitted our staffing ramp-up plan to the Department of Aging, Department of Health for all this upcoming because of the influx of this. So our staff parking, we're lit 10 to 11 cars will take up that property.
Okay.
And what we have, the rest will be divvied out to residents. Out of the 37, I mean, we have 2 parking right now, 2 cars in the parking lot that really don't even move. They just sit there.
With your addition, you don't have much increase in common areas.
We have quite a bit of common areas through the building. If anyone's ever been inside that property, there is a lot of common areas inside, or are you talking exterior common areas?
Inside common areas.
I would say each hallway has a minimum of 2 common areas that either have couches, TVs, sitting areas, computers, and then the main common areas throughout the entire main wing.
Did you have a rendering or anything of what the outside is going to look like, the architectural?
Not at the moment, no.
No. Maybe talk through what is your plan of how to match the existing buildings?
So, for what the building is going to look like, so this year we've already looked at changing out the current building. So the roof is going to be redone. They're ripping the roof off to redo that this year, and we're going to re-side the entire building. So the new building will have, I think we put 3-foot
Brick up.
3-foot brick, and then the rest will be a siding to match the current building.
Okay.
And then there's currently 3 front awnings on the building. Those are coming down just because they're old, worn out. So those would be like a wood bill with a shingle asphalt top to them.
You said the 3-foot stone or brick in the bottom was gonna be across the entire,
Yes, the whole
not
new,
just the new section, but the
just
new
the
and
new
the old
section,
section?
the
Just
new section, because the current section currently has P-TEX set at that height, so we can't. It'd just be a little bit difficult doing that.
With the enclosure of the courtyards with this building, do you see development in there for common areas outside? And do the people really utilize the common areas?
They don't use their common areas outside. They use their patios, but we do plan on putting a gazebo in each area. I know the owner has looked at putting like a concrete walkway from each area, and then a center one to the gazebo.
Okay. I think we've vetted this pretty well.
Yeah,
Sure.
just come forward.
Please.
Yep.
So again, sorry, one comment and one clarification. Like I said, we appreciate the screening they are putting in, and as you mentioned, it's kind of a catch-22. To me, they should have the screening there already, and it's not. And so if it doesn't go forward, we don't have the screening, you look straight at the buildings. So it is unfortunate in that regard. But my question is, on the, I think you said 132? So is 132 based on the current square footage? So what's the possibility that you add the square footage and ODH comes back and you apply and get the 132 increased and you still double bunk down the road? So I would want to make sure that there's not the potential based on the fact that they're adding additional square footage. Certainly the additional square footage is limited to the smaller single units, but they still have the 500 square foot units that could be double bunked if their application with ODH or their license is based on square footage. We certainly don't want to see even more increase on the property. So, thank you.
If I make my calculations correct, at this point, I see with the addition, which would be 35 units, the current 73 units, no one double bunked, you're at 110 units currently.
108, I believe. 108 is what we put
Okay.
at. We do not want to double bunk. We only have a few apartments in that are 2-bedroom. No one wants to double bunk apartments. I mean, especially on our end, because that's just more staff that we're gonna have to add. And as anyone knows, getting staffing is, especially in healthcare, is very hard. I mean, you go through 20 million applicants, you might get 3 or 4. So that's why we do want to keep our census low at that 108, but we don't want to maximize that. I mean, trying to put that many people into one building is just a nightmare. It's a nightmare for anyone on the fire department or any medical teams that have to come in there.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, as I was saying, as we think we've vetted this and we've taken in deep consideration both sides of this, I would make a motion to approve this application to move forward.
With conditions. With conditions?
Yes, with the conditions. Well, Jacob, did you have all the conditions laid out? As we've discussed it?
Yeah.
Or no?
The landscaping.
So, I'm sorry, so, all right, approve this application with the 8-foot fence that's been proposed, the entire length of the south side of the property, as well as the proposed greenery that has been approved by the neighboring residents, as well as the swale and drainage tiling that was also proposed and agreed upon.
And the deed restriction?
And the deed restriction.
I don't know. I'm not sure from a legal perspective that we can require that.
Okay.
So,
We can volunteer it.
You'd be willing to work with the neighbors?
I mean, personally, I would like, to me, to me, my biggest concern for this neighborhood is that this goes from assisted living to market rate.
Agreed.
Yep. I just think a market rate facility is 180-degree difference from assisted living.
I agree.
Agreed.
And so I would love to have some legal opinions from city attorney to understand what the deed restriction would truly do.
I think we can put it as a condition, just note pending legal approval. Like, in case they come back, I don't think they should have to come back to the committee if legally that's not a restriction that we can require. So we can make it as a condition, just notate that it needs to be approved by legal, that we can put that without them having to come back because they're not meeting a condition.
Okay, and I would maybe have legal look at the wording that they're going to put in the deed and have them kind of check off on it.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then the board could consider, and I would recommend, we've heard a lot of numbers about residents. You could put a condition on the maximum. I've heard 132. Mr. Roos mentioned, I've heard the residents want to double bunk, the facility doesn't want to double bunk, but Mr. Roos's comments where we're adding these other units, but then we still double bunk. Are we at 150, 160? So we could put a condition on the maximum number of residents. 132 is what I've heard.
Current license number 132.
I also understand the sweet spot of the operations of him having to find the staffing to, he's required to have a ratio of employees to healthcare providers to those residents. So if his sweet spot is 108. I mean, we can put, 102 would be fine, or I'm sorry, 132. But I also understand his operating margin based on employees is going to dictate that or drive that.
Sure, but 5 years from now, there might be a lot of medical employees available.
Fair.
I'm
Fair.
just,
You haven't
I'm
been
just-
around healthcare very long, have you? But
I'm
point taken.
optimistic.
Point taken.
So,
Point taken.
so we would motion to add the condition of not to exceed 132 residents.
Yes.
and I would like to have the ability for regional planning to look at the final landscaping plan.
Yeah, landscaping and
And
photometric plans
sign off.
will have
Yep.
to be.
Yes.
So I think there were two major concerns about this development coming in, right? The use and the density of the use, and then how do you screen that use from the neighbors? I think the applicant has done a good job working with neighbors to the south to address that in the screening perspective. And if it was deed restricted against apartment complexes, and if it was limited the number of the number of total residents, I think those addresses a lot of the concerns on density. So with those conditions, I would second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Jacob, when you're ready.
All right.
Oh, hold on. You have one more condition. That the approval has to be with the Board of Zoning Appeals 3 variance request.
Thank you, Eric. Yes.
It's an automatic included.
Thanks, Eric.
I think I'll just make a comment quick too before we vote, is that I appreciate what the owner is trying to do and to rehab this facility and all, which has been there many, many years. I certainly would not like to see any parking on the street. And if it comes to that, there probably are a few more green areas that we could encourage them to develop if need be. So, and like Matt, you're saying, this versus a multi-use residential, this would be less intrusive, I think.
Jacob?
Okay. Do you want me to read back the conditions I
That'd be
have,
good.
just so
Quickly,
everyone's
though.
comfortable? Okay. So the motion to approve with the following conditions: landscape plan approved by HRPC, the 8-foot fence that stretches along the south side of the facility. Swale and drainage plan approved by the city engineer's office. A deed restriction approved by the law director restricting the conversion of the facility into a market rate multifamily development. A maximum of 132 residents per the license requirement through the state of Ohio, and approval of the requested variances by the BZA.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, with that, Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Trombley,
Aye.
Mr. Klinger,
Aye.
and Mayor Marin.
Nay. I want you guys to be, but I just feel like it's too much for this area. All right. I know
Mayor, do you want to mention that this is going to BZA tonight?
you typically mention it goes to BZA
So
tonight.
this is really a two-part approval. So Planning Commission has approved the site plan, but they require 3 variances where they exceed the zoning regulations. So tonight at 6 p.m. in this building, in this room, the Board of Zoning Appeals will be looking at those 3 items, and they will make a decision whether to grant the variance. If they do not grant the variances, then we're kind of back to phase 1. They can't do what was approved today without the variances.
Can you clarify what the variances are?
The lot coverage going is
Lot
we're
coverage,
exceeding.
density, and what's the third area?
Market size units for the units are 208 existing. Our requirements were like 800, I do believe. So that's the request.
Yep, thank you. And good discussion. I appreciate everybody's engagement. All right, we are going to jump ahead because I know one of our applicants has to leave, and it should be a, hopefully, knock on wood, quick item. So we're going to jump forward to item number, excuse me, I got a frog. New item number 3, application for zoning amendment ZA-05-2024, filed by Jean Bosco Duzengimana to rezone 0 Glessner Avenue, parcel 560001008484 from I-1 light industrial to CD condominium. CPC staff comments.
All right. So this request is located on the east side of Glessner Avenue, south of West Sandusky Street. It is zoned I-1 light industrial. To the north along West Sandusky Street, it is zoned R2 medium lot residential. To the south, it's zoned I-1 light industrial. It is not located within a 100-year floodplain. Parcel history, the site is currently vacant. Staff analysis, the applicant has indicated they would like to rezone the parcel from the I-1 light industrial district to CD condominium. In their application, they noted that this would be a good step between the single-family neighborhood to the north and the industrial to the south. The CD condominium unit is designed to provide sites for condominium dwellings, structures, and related uses. The district allows for the development of structures with 1 to 4 living units per building. This lot would have the required frontage for the district and could have up to 13 units on site to meet that density requirement, which is 1 unit per 7,000 square feet. Staff has concerns about the historic use of the site and the potential environmental impact on the property. There's heavy industrial nearby, which could have impacted the site, and given the area surrounding the site, while we're in favor of a residential zoning zoning classification, staff would be more supportive of a R3 single-family small lot district to better match the existing nature of the area. So I did talk with the applicant about the environmental impacts on the site. I asked if there were any like phase 1s or assessments done on the site, and he said that the owner did not have any on record. We checked some with some of our resources and could not find any historic inventories of having like a tank on site. So we believe that it's always been vacant. And in terms of the recommendation, I didn't put one just like the last one, just because the applicant is applying for CD condominium, and while we're more supportive of a single-family residential, I wasn't sure if the applicant would be comfortable with that type of a zoning classification as well. So we just felt it was best to just leave it off. So
Engineering,
No comment.
fire prevention.
No comment?
Very good. So the recommendation before the commission, I don't see one. And so discussion, if you could just introduce yourself, the applicant, a little bit about the project or
I'm Todd
request.
Jenkins from Peterman's. You guys know I'm representing the project. And
Bosco.
so one of the reasons we are looking at the condominium district in this as opposed to an R3 is because of the way the existing roads are configured. There's a vacated right-of-way on the south end of this property. There's an existing right-of-way on the east side that's undeveloped. And to truly put in an R3, you would have to have frontage on public roadways, the construction of that public roadway, and so forth. If we went through the middle of the site and then we had to construct going back out to Sandusky, the cost of putting that public infrastructure in would pretty much be cost prohibitive in allowing the development to go forward. You'd actually be allowed more density in an R3, but with the cost of and so forth, it doesn't make sense. So with a condominium, you're going to have a lesser density by about 9 lots, but at the same time, you're going to have a condominium type development that is going to be a little bit more spread out. You can have a 3,500 square foot lot size in an R3, where for condo, you can have 1 per 7,000 square feet. So it's going to be less dense use, less intensity, less traffic, and we feel more suited for that area.
So what's the plan for, I know this is just the rezoning, but what do you want to put on the lot?
Condominiums for lease or sale.
Do you have a number of
how many
units?
units
that are
per
targeted?
building?
We're allowed 13, so we're going to do everything we can do to get 13
Okay.
in there. So.
But that's, and again, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, because there's a range here. You can put 13 units, but for each unit, you can actually put 4 living units in that, each 13.
The
So
13 units is individual living units,
individual
correct?
units.
So-
Yeah. So the buildings
so
themselves can
52
be
units aren't going to end up on
No,
here.
no.
Okay.
So
absolutely not.
I just wanted to make sure I
Yep.
was
Yep.
understanding the
each
density
building
of this.
can have between 1 and 4
Each building.
dwellings attached to it.
Mhm. Yeah. So if we had 4-unit buildings, we could have 3 4-unit buildings in a single, and that's all we could have.
Okay.
Total living spaces.
That makes me feel a little better. I was looking at 52 units, not knowing where they were going to go.
Nope, absolutely not.
Is this alley here vacated?
No.
Would you keep that alley? I mean,
We wouldn't really utilize it. I mean,
Wouldn't
if the city
utilize-
wanted to vacate it, we'd have no problem with that.
okay.
And you mentioned this here. This
Yes.
is actually an alleyway as well.
Is that an alley or an actual public right-of-way? I think it's a 50-foot wide right-of-way.
Yeah, I think it's more of a roadway right away.
Okay.
Setbacks on the setbacks on the condominium is like 30 feet on the rear yard?
I would have
Think.
to check. Do you know off the top of your head, Jacob? No, I mean, we have to come back with a site plan.
Yeah,
If we get to
right.
that point, we'll come back with a
Detention
site
and all.
plan. We'll have all the setbacks and show the buildings and development and everything.
Yeah, from my perspective, I was a little curious as well, kind of on why you didn't do the residential lots, but I think it makes sense. I do like that it does kind of create less density. Obviously, I would just highlight the need to do some additional investigation on the environmental, and obviously, as you come back through site plan, I'd encourage you to make sure you look at nice landscaping and different things. But I think from a zoning perspective, I don't have an issue with it because I do think it is kind of a nice buffer from the residential. The access makes point. And then as we look at the site plan, I think we can address how it can kind of blend into the neighborhood without being dense. So I feel I'm comfortable with the zoning classification. Just so I don't forget, is there anyone else that's here to speak for or against this item? Because sometimes people hide from me. So, okay. Do you want to come forward? If you could, please just introduce yourself and provide your address.
Good morning. My name is Donna Wolf Mason. I live at 1029 West Sandusky Street. And I'm approving the condominium zoning change. I think that would be a wonderful idea. I wouldn't want a factory in my backyard. So, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that matches my thoughts exactly. It's removing it from an industrial use to what should be a more residential use. My only comment to the applicant is that screening for those condominiums, I know we'll do this during a site plan review, but that's going to be an important thing, that screening up against the edge of the tank farm.
Tank farm and also the light industrial to the west also.
Yeah. With that, I'd make a motion to approve the rezoning request.
I will second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Jacob, when you're ready.
Mr. Trombley,
Aye.
Mr. Klinger,
Aye.
Mayor Murin,
Aye.
and Mr. Martin.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Mayor, thank you.
Yeah, good luck. All right.
You're on fire today, Eric.
Look at you, showing up. Doing your job today. I'm just kidding. We always got it. He pinched you. All right, moving on to new item, jumping back to item number 1. Application for zoning amendment ZA-04-2024 filed by the owner Mohammed Khalil to rezone 1700 Western Avenue from I-1 Light Industrial to C2 General Commercial. CPC staff comments.
Okay. So this request is located on the west side of Western Avenue at the intersection with Lake Cascades Parkway. It is zoned I-1 Light Industrial. To the north, it is zoned I-2 Heavy Industrial. To the southeast, it's zoned O1 Office Institution. It's not located within a 100-year floodplain, and the City of Findlay Land Use Plan designates the parcel as industrial. Parcel history: the site is currently vacant. In 1995, Chase Bank built a drive-through building on site, and it was part of the Lake Cascades PUD, which started in 1988. But when PUDs were removed in 2011, it became zoned I-1 Light Industrial. Staff analysis: so the applicant has indicated they'd like to rezone this parcel to C2 General Commercial. This area is in an industrial area of Findlay, given the proximity to Cooper Tire, and the interstate is abutting the back of the property. The C2 commercial district is established to provide for development of broad spectrum of commercial and business uses, and these uses are expected to serve the commercial, business, and service needs of a regional area. Given the size of the shape of the lot, however, it does not really lend itself to an industrial development. Even though there is a lack of commercial zoning in the area, it does better fit in the C2 General Commercial District. So staff recommendation: CPC staff recommends approval of application for zoning amendment ZA-4-2024 filed by the owner Mohammed Khalil to rezone 1700 Western Avenue from I-1 Light Industrial to C2 General Commercial.
Engineering.
No comment.
Fire prevention.
No comment.
So the recommendation from staff is staff recommends CPC recommend approval of application for zoning amendment ZA-04-2024 filed by the owner Mohammed Khalil to rezone 1700 Western Avenue from I-1 Light Industrial to C2 General Commercial. Discussion. Is the applicant here to speak on this item? If you could please come forward and just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're thinking here.
Hello, my name is Ahmad Khalil. I'm Mohammed Khalil's son. I was actually the one who purchased the property. I saw the Chase Bank, so I thought it was retail. We just want to have something for us. It's our first property we've ever bought, so just something that we can rent out or just be able to use, I guess. And also with us being as a retail, we'll have employees from Findlay in the store, so they'll be able to tell us when our lawn's high or if we need to fix the property, so it'd be way easier for us to maintain as well.
Do you have an intended business there?
Yeah, so we have Hippie Head Smoke Shop, but we just want to do a general, it's not, you can't really do a smoke shop, so it'd just be a general drive-through.
What is it?
A drive-through for the time being.
What type of shop though?
Just like a retail convenience store.
Oh.
And then eventually we would just want to rent the property out. But for the time being, we would just want to use our use.
Yeah, it's kind of out of the way from the standpoint of other commercial properties and so forth to establish and drive that traffic there.
I know we're not at a site plan review, but can you explain like how you would use, are you gonna demolish the building at all? Or are you looking to utilize the building as is? Like how would that work?
As a mom and pop, we would make no, we would just renovate. We would no demolition. It would keep the same structure. We'd keep the same structure of the building as a drive-through.
I guess it's a very small space that, you know, most of that structure is really the lanes for the drive-through. Is there really enough space in there for?
Yeah, and there's also a bathroom inside.
Okay.
So, from my perspective, given this is just a rezoning, and I know we all want to kind of just understand so we can
Right.
help you maybe see some issues, but I think from a rezoning standpoint, general commercial does fit this area. I think it's more conducive to businesses that would potentially locate there in the future. You're not going to be able, unless the neighboring property decided to buy that for extra storage, it's not large enough for an industrial operation. So I think the zoning fits the potential use of the property more accurately.
Yeah, I'd second that. I mean, I drive past this almost every day and wonder when something's going to happen here. So I think it fits in kind of a retail general commercial zoning much better than any type of industrial use. And so I'd make a motion to approve the rezoning.
A second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Was there anyone else here that wanted to speak for or against this item? Any other questions or comments from the committee or commission staff? All right, hearing none. Jacob, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Klinger?
Aye.
Mayor Mehren?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Mr. Trombley?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Good luck with the business.
And then that planning and zoning committee is at noon. Ahmad, planning and zoning meets again at noon to discuss the recommendation from this meeting. So
How long is this meeting?
half hour or so.
It should be short, yeah.
All right. Item number 2, application for conditional CU-12-2024 filed by Richard Benner to establish a triplex on the vacant lot west of 615 Edgar Avenue. CPC staff comments.
Okay, so this request is located on the south side of East Edgar Avenue, just east of the intersection with Bank Street. It is zoned R2. It was, currently is zoned R2 medium lot residential. It's in a pocket of R2 medium lot residential and has proximity to PO Parks and Open Space with Emory Adams just to the north, and it is not located within a 100-year floodplain. Personal history. So the site is currently a part of 615 East Edgar Avenue. It's a double lot and was in process of being split. Matt, if you can you put the that box with the yellow was the proposed split, which I just saw the deed for, I believe, on Tuesday or Monday, which we reviewed it based on the zoning and signed off on it. So that split is going through currently. At the September 12th, 2024 CPC meeting, this property was recommended to rezone from R2 medium lot residential to R3 small lot residential. Staff analysis, the applicant has indicated that they would like to construct a triplex on site. Triplexes are a conditional use in the R3 small lot residential district. The applicant submitted a floor plan which shows that the floor space for each unit is 977 square feet. This meets the minimum floor space for a dwelling unit. The applicant has indicated they would like to provide 6 off-street parking spots for the units. 2 are shown in front of the building with 4 in the rear of the site. The driveway would wrap around down to the east of the site, connecting with the alleyway to the east. Down and around this way. In the R3 district, where one or more lots are improved, the front yard setback shall be the average depth of the front yard setbacks on either side. So staff would add a condition that the parking be removed from in front of the structure so that the setback can be met to match on either side of the site. So staff recommendations, CPC staff recommends approval of the application for conditional use CU-12-2024 filed by Richard Benner to establish a triplex on the vacant lot west of 615 East Edgar Avenue with the following condition. Complete the lot split from 615 East Edgar Avenue. Complete the rezoning from R2 to R3 small lot residential. Move the parking behind the front facade of the building, and move the front of the building in line with the average setback depth of the neighboring houses.
Very good. Engineering?
No comment.
Fire prevention?
No comment.
All right, so the recommendation before the commission is they recommend approval for conditional use CU-12-2024 filed by Richard Benner to establish a triplex on the vacant lot west of 615 Edgar Avenue with the following conditions. Complete the lot split, complete the rezone to R3 small lot residential, move all the parking behind the front facade of the building, and move the front of the building in line with the average setback depth of the neighborhood. Mr. Benner, if you can come forward. My first question to get us started off is, are you able to accommodate all of the conditions as staff is recommending?
Well, we are able to, and I understand you guys' position on it. A lot of the people we rent to are elderly, handicapped, and or just plain lazy. In my experience, parking 150 feet away from your apartment is generally not going to happen. They're going to end up in the grass off of Edgar. So to move all of the parking to the rear, I think, I don't want to say it's a bad decision, but the person that lives in the apartment closest to Edgar, if they forget their phone in their car, it's a 300 foot walk back and forth. In my experience, people park in the grass, they park in front of their apartment. They do not park in the parking areas that are designated. And if we were to move all the parking in the rear, I think it would be a problem with parking up front off of Edgar. And the landscaping that we plan on putting, it's just gonna get destroyed by people parking there. And I don't think we want parking off of Edgar. I just don't think it's the road to do that on.
Are the spots that, are they designated per unit or no? Is it just first come, first served? There's 6 spots for 3 units.
Yeah, there'd be 3 at the north and 3 at the south end of it there. The 3 would be 2 for the, I don't know if it's got A or B on there. 2 for the front apartment, and then 1 for the middle, along with the rear parking would be 2 for the back and 1 for the middle.
So said another way, the front unit would have adjacent parking spots and the back unit would have adjacent spots. It's just the middle unit that wouldn't have.
Right, the middle unit would have 1 at the rear and 1 at the front.
Okay.
First I want to say I'm a big fan of your infill development projects. Infilling projects within existing neighborhoods.
Oh.
We don't have to build new infrastructure. It's just a great use of land, and it's something the city encourages. It would be great, and you can tell me the reasons why it's probably not going to be feasible or in your situation, but it would be great if the building had kind of the form factor of the existing buildings around it, in that I don't have so much issue with a triplex. And I know some folks have done some infill projects where when you're driving down the street, you can't really tell it's a triplex. It has the same, where this is, this person here, they have their house, and all of a sudden they have someone's front door is now in their backyard. Whereas if it was kind of the building mass up here, you'd probably have to do 2 stories. But if the building mass was up here and then the parking lot back there, kind of the same form factor as these homes. That was my one kind of critique.
Additionally, with the upfront parking spots, those are, your car lights are shining right in those people's house, right into their windows.
Yeah.
So I think having, even though I understand the people needing to, it's, when you live in an apartment, you frequently have to walk a little bit, or, you know, in a duplex, triplex. So I still agree with the condition of moving them to the back. Because I do think it is more conducive for the neighborhood and creates that better image for the neighborhood.
And I would just seek a variance for the front parking? Or you're asking no parking in the front?
I would so this is a conditional use request, so that this commission, this body determines any conditions that we want to place on the project.
Okay.
And my understanding is the only way to appeal it would be taking us to court. I don't
Okay.
think there's really, Eric?
And just talking to Rich, what he's talking about is putting 2 spots here and getting a variance for the required parking, but still moving the building up to be level with what's existing there. Because he has 18 feet here, so he could fit 2 9-foot by 18-foot parking spots coming in the driveway and pulling in like it is here, but putting parking up there and requesting a variance for that relief.
Yes.
This just feels to me like this is, you're shoving a triplex into, I realize that it's zoned R3 or will be zoned R3 soon, but you're shoving a triplex and a whole bunch of parking and pavement into an area that didn't really have it to begin with. It was single-family homes, still is single-family homes. So I'm not opposed to a duplex or triplex per se, but the way this is laid out, this isn't going to fit, I feel, with the area. So I mean, that's my concern. It would have to really fit and look and feel like it's a single-family home in this neighborhood for me to say that it's okay going to a much denser use.
So you're talking about moving the triplex up even with the other houses?
Yeah, I mean, not just moving it up, but I would want to see what is it going to look like? How is it going to fit and feel with those houses that are nearby, and not look like we just put 3 buildings that are right next to each other and plopping them onto the land just to fill spaces.
I'm not sure of the question.
There wasn't a question.
It was a
He was
comment.
just sharing his thoughts
Okay.
and
Yeah.
concerns. So again,
Does
kind
that
of,
make sense? I mean, I'd like to see what is the building going to look like? How are you going to make
We
it
did
fit
send-
with
We
the
did send some
existing ones?
photos into,
Okay.
who did we send it to, Jacob? You didn't receive them yesterday? The ones we did on North Blanchard Street, we sent those photos in. The one I did last year on McConnell, we sent the photos in. It's a ranch-style house, or a ranch-style apartment building with landscaping, and we even thought about parking, instead of having from the building to the driveway, instead of having that yard, is to have parallel parking on the east side of that. I was just trying to keep away from that because there's a lot of people to park right in front of their door. They love doing it, but it just makes it tough for other people coming and going.
Sure.
yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, we
understand
could
that.
pull the building forward and do either the variance up front or parallel parking on the side. But, I wasn't a fan of the parallel parking. I think a little bit of yard, front and back, makes it more desirable.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with your properties. I do like them. I, again, like the infill aspect. I would agree with Carrie on, I think a triplex might be a bit too much for this area because it is, you know, you are pretty wedged between 2 single-family residential properties. So I think I would prefer to see it a duplex, and that you're able to move it up some, get variance for the parking up front, to have 2 parking spots up there and then the other 2 in the back. And I think that that's a much more conducive layout for that parcel. There's not anybody else sitting out there, right? Behind
Nope,
Dan,
no one
okay.
hiding.
Last man standing.
You're the last man standing. Thanks for your patience. Appreciate it. Dan, Rob, other thoughts, questions?
Well, only that I wasn't in favor of the rezoning in the first place, and so I'm not in favor of the triplex on that property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the infill, and I love the work you've done, especially up off of North Blanchard. I think that was great infill, so I support what you're doing, trying to do here and what you've done other places. But I agree with the other comments that have been made about it. I'd like it to be shifted up towards, so it aligns with the other properties or the buildings on other properties, and having somebody's front door looking into someone's backyard, I think a duplex might fit this better as we shift it up and keep the parking, align the parking better. So I just think a triplex here is a bit much.
It's too long and linear to fit on the site and be comfortable.
Oh, it fits, but
Say,
I think it also, though, it's not harmonious with the existing
Right.
neighbors. I think that's my concern.
It sounds like we're almost more concerned with the form and function of the building. And some being long, I don't want to speak for everybody. Do you have any floor plans that you've done in the past where it's more of like the front of the house, looks like a regular house, and then you have the parking in the back, and then there's like two or three entrances in the back kind of thing?
I do not.
Okay.
The ranch style has been popular for
Been
the
your bre-
elderly, handicapped, and quite frankly, the people that can't climb the steps.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, if we can't we could just abandon this project, I guess, because even a duplex, I mean, it would be more yard, but it wouldn't really be feasible to spend the money on just a duplex on this area. And I can't do two buildings, obviously. That's why we went with one building with a triplex. But facing the road, you're talking with Edgar, it was a two-story?
Yeah.
No, yeah, we're trying to keep everything ranches because they're just, nowadays it seems more popular, not just for rentals, but for the new housing that we're doing now. I haven't built a two-story in 8 years, 10 years. 'Cause
Okay.
elderly and even the young with only one or two children, they're just not interested in the two stories.
I think this doesn't make sense here. I would love to make it work, but I think it's just too much. So I would make the motion to deny.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments?
Nope, other than, so right now you're agreeing to a duplex, not a triplex?
No, we are not agreeing to a conditional use at this point in time because your request was for the triplex. I think if you want to try to rework it to a duplex, we're open to that. But I think the big concern is making sure that it's harmonious with the area. You have two small lot residential properties right next to you, and I think we would like to see something that looks more conducive to that. So you're welcome to bring back a duplex plan, but I think we would like to see more details on how it's going to fit into the neighborhood and not look out of place.
Well, that would take a month though, right?
Yeah.
The next meeting?
Correct.
A
Yeah.
duplex, you're talking about a duplex facing the Edgar and doing a two-story?
I'm open to creative ideas. I think the important part is, at least on that end, I think we would like to see something that looks more like a single-family residential. I'm not necessarily opposed to having one front entrance facing the road and then maybe something behind it where there's an access off of the parking / alleyway, driveway area. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I think it's, again, looking when you're driving down the street, you shouldn't look over and go, what in God's green earth is that doing there? And I think that that's a little bit what I'm feeling right now.
Mayor,
Yeah.
just like we did with the assisted living, will we be best off to table this and give him that opportunity? That way he doesn't
don't have to pay fees
have
again.
extra cost and fees.
Yeah. Are you willing to kind of rework it and modify and come back? Would you? And what we can do is, instead of completely denying it, we can table it, give you some time to rework and come back, and then you don't have to reapply and pay fees. And then if you decide you don't want to move forward, then you can just notify us. We remove it from the table and kill it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, well then I will revoke my motion to deny and change my motion to a table.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All right. Jacob, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Mayor Maron,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Mr. Trombley,
Aye.
and Mr. Klinger.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I don't think we have other items. I didn't have an agenda page or I lost it at some point, so, all right. Seeing this, there are no other items on the agenda. This meeting of Planning Commission is adjourned.